Hey, welcome back to my channel. If you don't know me, my name is Amber Campbell. I'm an indie author and a freelance editor, and today is the release day for my third poetry collection, Daughter of the Bottle. I am so excited. This is a poetry collection centered on caring for a loved one in active addiction. So for today, I'm doing something I have not yet done before, which is read some of my favorite poems from each of the three sections, which are in youth, in love, and in death. So I'm pulling out the older copy, which as you can see is just a lot darker. But this is the one that I was editing and touching up. So I'm trying not to touch the pretty one so that for photos it looks good and doesn't have all the fingerprints that this one does. But I'm really excited. I haven't done this. I think when I first started marketing my debut poetry collection, I think I did a couple YouTube shorts and I quickly X'd that because I wasn't quite there yet. But I do want to read some from here. I'm really excited, and I don't know how many times I can tell you I'm excited. That seems to just be my thing. So first we're gonna go for In Youth. This one only has a couple poems. It is mainly prose, and I kind of did that because I did that because I started with prose. Poetry was something I never really dabbled in when I was in high school and college, which is when actually both of those short stories were written. So I have just kind of tweaked them up to really fit the overall narrative of this, which wasn't difficult at all because they already fit the narrative pretty well. But I just want to read the titular text, right? I think I said that right. I'm a writer. I'm not a speaker. Those are two very different skills. I just want to read, so the poem that appears on the back of the paperback is the one that we're going to read today. And it is called Fears. Don't forget to mind your fears, because they haven't forgotten you. Remember their names, because they still whisper yours. Can therapy fix the damage created from a person who bled out and spread their sadness onto the floor and into the mind of a child? Can therapy fix the broken person, even as the news outlets and the government tell us no one is broken? How can I recover when no one knew of the fractured mind and splintered heart? How does one put together a soul when it was formed from shards of love? How do I let go of the fear that has constantly comforted me from the demons it sparks? I spoke about this before where I wasn't sure what poem would go on the back, and that was so easy for me to choose for my first two collections, but it wasn't until this poem was written that I realized I needed to include a piece of that, because it really is a fear situation, especially as a child when you're fearing a parent in active addiction. It is just very hard to kind of move forward from that. So my next poem is going to be from In Love, which is the second section of Daughter of the Bottle, and that is looking at, again, being like more of the adult child with a parent in active addiction, but also finding yourself in situationships and relationships where you're with somebody who's exhibiting the same signs or the same attitudes or the same mannerisms, simply because you're in that caretaker role and you don't really know how to do anything else. So I'm going to read a couple different ones from both of those perspectives. This one was mentioned a couple times from my early reviewers, so I do want to read this one, and it is called Blameless. My therapist said it's not your fault you drink, and that something happened long ago that caused severe anxiety and depression and possible PTSD, and that's really why you drink. My therapist said that medication wasn't acceptable in the 70s and 80s when you were a child, so maybe your parents passed on their problems to you without meaning to. My therapist said that only recently did society accept mental illness as something that requires additional help and prescriptions, and not just a lobotomy and electrical shocks. My therapist said you need help just like I'm getting help, but that your generation didn't believe in therapy because it was like admitting you're broken, and Gen Xers aren't broken. My therapist said I can't blame you for being a byproduct of your depression and anxiety because it started before you knew how to fight back. But my therapist said not to blame myself because I did nothing wrong, and to act in a way that protects my boundaries and physical and emotional safety when you lose control. My therapist says things like these are blameless because there's not a singular moment of decision where someone says, I want to be an alcoholic. So now I see my therapist, and so does all of my generation and the ones after mine, because they can't blame their parents for the emotional abuse, the physical abuse, sexual abuse, and financial abuse they experienced. But our parents and grandparents can call us selfish and spoiled and privileged snowflakes because we seek understanding and help instead of substances to numb the pain. I don't blame you. But how do victims seek retribution when their inflictors have done unintentional harm? The drunk driver is sentenced to prison for vehicular manslaughter, but the parent maintains custody when throwing plates across the house and punching holes in the wall. If there is no one to blame, why are there victims? This next poem is still from the child's view, and this is more of a storytelling type of poem, which I absolutely love and I'm trying to do more of. This one is called Borrowed Stories. My first car was a faded blue Honda. I don't remember the model anymore. I drove it for only a couple of years in high school before I left for university out of state. I learned to drive in it, and to this day, I can drive without the passenger mirror because for 2 years my car didn't have one after you hit a mailbox coming home late at night. You had driven home buzzed from the dive bar, where you swore you'd been alone, but the heated whispers that followed me the next day told me more than you'd ever say. Those mirrors ended up saving my life when I'd saved up enough money to buy a new car, and narrowly caught sight of the candy apple red Mustang zooming past me on the highway. Why I bothered looking, I'll never know, since I'd never had a reason to look before, but it was probably your slurred voice in my head, giving me life lessons after I'd been in bed for hours, advising me not to switch lanes when I caught sight of a crow flying past the windshield like the farmer's almanac of drunk adages. But perhaps there's truth to your madness, because I saw the crow, looked in that shiny new side mirror, and veered to the right as soon as I saw the flash of red. I think this one is more indicative of my voice and my style, because I love like the little petty remarks, the little humor in there, but I also think that that's very relatable for any child of an addict, that in random moments you realize, oh, something they said in one of their moments actually led up to something or was good advice in that moment. So I really loved that one. It was, again, borrowed stories, so they were like pieces I took from other individuals, not just myself, and it's just one of my personal favorites in the section In Love. So this will be my last poem I'm reading from the middle section, and it is called Abusive Love is a Magic 8-Ball. I'm realizing there's a lot of therapy in here. I hope that gives you any indication of how much better I'm doing now. Abusive love is a magic 8-ball. I don't need a therapist to tell me that I seek men who drink because it's all I know. I don't need a therapist to diagnose me with codependency, emotional trauma, anxiety, and mild depression. I don't need a therapist to listen to the problems swimming in my head before I've even touched the pillow. I need a phantom of every father who ever drank to hide from his problems, to wrap me in a hug and say sorry. Yes, I blame you. I always did, but I don't know if I will tomorrow. Ask me then. Ask me when I've cooled off and calmed down and don't hold my knees to my chest on the ground, or I learn to cry without making a sound. Ask me tomorrow and I'll answer truthfully. And if you don't like the response, ask again later. A lot of these poems kind of tie into each other. I think that was very clear in 3 of the 4 poems I've read so far, and then you kind of get like an outlier like borrowed stories. But really there is a linear route that you're following with the child, as opposed to the more relationship-focused ones that are in here. And I might actually read one just so that there is a difference. Not a difference. More examples for you. Alrighty, this next one is called Faded Summer. The orange hue of a faded summer transforms the rickety bench by the water into a kaleidoscope of sweaty hands and tan leather that smells of your '09 Nissan Beater, where we kissed during bright weather and did more waiting for storms to get better. I can taste the shift to autumn, as crisp as I licked your lips of your roommate's rum that you stole when you caught him stealing your cash, but that crash at rock bottom is the only reason you didn't run when I told you where I'd come from. Winter brings the chill in my bones when I realized I was finally alone because you stopped blowing up my phone, and I hated how I missed when I didn't know how quickly I'd grow to love you so. A flowery scent of geranium and jasmine, a pop of yellow and purple and mint, a spring of life floods my senses, while I accept that life is about building fences to shield my peace and not to keep out sin. The seasons change, but your bottle stays the same. How long until you forget my name? How long until I forget the pain? How long until we wash the stain of pale ale and doomed dreams down the drain? And that was the section in love. This next section is titled In Death, and I am going to give a little, trigger warning for this next poem I'm going to read. It is a little raunchy in a humorous way. If you're uncomfortable with that, I do have timestamps down below. This one is called Frisky Business, Dealing with the Dead. So if you're not really a fan of raunchiness, you can go ahead and skip to whatever poem title is after this one. Actually, let me grab the new one, because I don't think I made any changes to it, but in case I did, I want to make sure I give you the correct one, because this is funny. We collected the bag of ashes from the funeral home. Mom and I thought they'd given us Belize sand, because the movies always make the dead look more like fire pit ashes instead of the assortment of tans you came out in. We laughed when we used a funnel to pour the ashes into a Crown bottle, because you loved your whiskey, but I shrieked when some fell and hit my thumb, and I asked Mom what I should do if the ashes that landed on me were from your penis. She stopped pouring as her body shook with laughter. My aunt said my humor was terrible, and it is, because had you been with us, you would have said the joke before I did. But then Mom laughed and said there probably wouldn't be any ashes for that, because there wasn't enough of one to make ashes. And we paused the whole whiskey bottle urn business before we spilled you all over the laundry room for us to walk through for the next 20 years, wondering which pieces of you would have stuck between our toes and which pieces would have sunk into the floorboards to haunt the next family that resided in it. Alrighty, this next poem is called Kintsugi. Kintsugi pottery is an ancient Japanese practice of repairing broken pottery with gold and creating a new work of art in the process. I hope our memories will be as golden as the sun and patch together these broken hearts into a masterpiece we couldn't see before. Sometimes we can't repair what's broken because it was never meant to be. We find new purpose in recreation, and starting over is always clean, even if you filled your cracks with so much gold that you shine like the brilliant gem you are. I wonder if you ever gave yourself clean slates, or if you held on to your chalky, dusty board and punished yourself for mistakes we'd forgotten. I pray your passing molded your pain in gold, because your memory is the only thing that keeps me from falling apart when I think I can't take another day without you. And for any of my family watching this, just because I love seeing them cry because I'm a horrible, evil person, this final poem is called This One's for Dad. I'm sorry I could never find the words to speak when you were still with me, but I don't think they would have done this justice. I wish I could have told you every word, dashing across the page as I write, but they would have caused more stress and pain than they ever could cause now, because now I believe you understand me. I keep your phone by my side of the bed, and I check on your truck in the driveway to pretend as though you're here through these objects, and not energy coursing through the universe or living in heaven with your family and friends. I'm sorry I never spoke to you about my fears, and I'm sorry our relationship was strained on both sides, but I don't regret any of my decisions in the end, because my only job was distracting you from the pain, and I hope I did it okay, even though we both know you'd never show the truth to anyone but me and Mom. You always wanted to be strong for others, when we only needed you to be strong for yourself. Nothing can change how our lives played out, but even the darkest nights are behind me. I hope these words find you now, somehow, because they're for you, and for all the ones who try to be their best. That's all you can be, and that's what you were. Daughter of the Bottle is available at all retailers as of today, August 23rd, and you can pick it up in ebook or paperback form. I hope that was a good enough sample to kind of get an idea of the type of writing and themes that you will find in this collection. Thank you to everyone who pre-ordered, to all of my lovely ARC readers who have been sharing the book for the last couple of weeks. I really appreciate all of you, and yeah, go ahead, go pick it up, and let's all cry together. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.